Hi, this is Daniel. I serve as a spokesperson for Nehemiah Reset. Today I wanted to explore the new global alliances that Trump is orchestrating in the Middle East and the Indo-Pacific. In the spring of 2026, the international order witnessed a seismic shift as President Donald Trump, leveraging his second term's political capital, began orchestrating a fundamental realignment of global power structures. Moving beyond traditional diplomatic frameworks, Trump has been forging what analysts are calling a superpower alliance that unites the United States, Israel, and Gulf states against their common adversary, Iran. Simultaneously, he has been nurturing a burgeoning partnership between India and Japan aimed at counterbalancing China's growing influence in the Indo-Pacific. This dual-pronged approach represents Trump's most ambitious foreign policy initiative yet, fundamentally reshaping decades-old alliances and creating new geopolitical realities that could define international relations for generations to come. The urgency of these developments has been magnified by the ongoing conflict between the U.S.-Israel coalition and Iran, which erupted in late February 2026 and quickly escalated into a regional war with global economic implications. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz to international shipping and Iran's retaliatory strikes against neighboring Gulf states have created both crisis and opportunity. Crisis that demands immediate resolution and opportunity to establish new paradigms of cooperation. As traditional alliances like NATO have shown reluctance to support U.S. military actions, Trump has doubled down on building alternative coalitions based on shared strategic interests rather than historical obligations. First, let's look at the Middle East realignment and the forging of a new anti-Iran coalition. The foundation of Trump's Middle East strategy rests on a simple yet revolutionary premise: that shared threats can create more durable partnerships than shared values. For decades, U.S. policy in the region had attempted to balance relationships with Israel and Arab states while containing Iran's influence through a combination of economic sanctions and limited military engagement. Trump, however, abandoned this delicate balancing act in favor of openly aligning with Israel and willing Gulf partners to confront Iran directly. This approach represents a dramatic departure from previous administrations, where Obama sought to engage Iran through the nuclear deal and Bush attempted to democratize the region. Trump has pursued a policy of maximum pressure and explicit alliance building. His decision to withdraw from the Iran nuclear agreement in his first term, while controversial, created the diplomatic space necessary for this realignment. By 2026, the relationships he had cultivated through the Abraham Accords and other bilateral agreements had matured into what could be described as a de facto security architecture. The military operation dubbed Operation Epic Fury, launched jointly by the U.S. and Israel against Iran on February 28, 2026, marked the first major test of this emerging alliance. The operation's opening salvo targeted the heart of the Iranian regime, including Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, triggering immediate and widespread retaliation from Iran across the Middle East. While the operation caused enormous damage and resulted in thousands of casualties across Iran, Lebanon, Israel, and Gulf states, it also cemented the military cooperation between these nations in ways that diplomatic agreements alone could not achieve. Who are the key members of these new alliances, and what is their strategic calculations? The core of Trump's Middle East alliance consists of the United States, Israel, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and to a lesser extent, Qatar and other Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC states. Each member brings unique capabilities and motivations to this coalition. Israel provides the technological military expertise and regional intelligence network that has proven invaluable in targeting Iranian assets. Their willingness to conduct direct strikes against Iranian interests, including the controversial attack on the South Pars natural gas field in the Persian Gulf on March 18, 2026, demonstrated their commitment to degrading Iran's capabilities. Saudi Arabia offers conventional military power and Sunni religious leadership that helps legitimize the coalition within the Arab world. Reports of Saudi fighter jets bombing Iran-backed militias in Iraq represent a significant escalation in their willingness to directly confront Iranian influence beyond their borders. The United Arab Emirates has emerged as both a financial and logistical hub for the alliance, though at considerable cost. Iran has struck the UAE more than its other Gulf neighbors in response to U.S.-Israeli attacks, targeting critical oil infrastructure and demonstrating the vulnerability of even the most developed Gulf states. Qatar, despite its historical differences with Saudi Arabia and the UAE, has reluctantly joined the coalition due to economic pressures and security concerns. Iran's retaliatory strike against the world's largest LNG production facility in Qatar underscored the costs of neutrality in this conflict. Were some recent demonstrations of the alliance's cohesion. The new alliance has demonstrated its effectiveness through several coordinated actions in early 2026. Perhaps most significant was the joint U.S.-Israeli operation that successfully guided commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz in early May. Dubbed Project Freedom, this operation allowed 2 U.S.-flagged commercial vessels to pass through the strait despite Iranian attempts to block transit, though it was met with deadly confrontations between U.S. and Iranian forces. Another example of alliance cohesion came on May 18, 2026, when Trump postponed a scheduled attack on Iran at the request of Gulf states, including Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. This demonstrated that the alliance operates not as a U.S.-dominated hierarchy, but as a partnership where member states have genuine influence over strategic decisions. The same day, U.S. forces crippled an Iranian-flagged oil tanker in the Gulf of Oman after it allegedly attempted to breach the American blockade, showing the coalition's commitment to enforcing its security measures. The economic dimension of the alliance has also been evident, as Iran attempted to selectively approve transit through the Strait of Hormuz, allowing some ships through based on negotiations or hefty tolls. The alliance worked to maintain alternative supply routes and reduce global dependence on Iranian-controlled energy channels. This economic warfare component has proven as important as the military operations in pressuring Iran. Next, let's look at the Indo-Pacific pivot, which is fostering India-Japan cooperation against China. While the Middle East alliance has taken center stage due to the ongoing conflict, Trump's parallel effort to foster closer cooperation between India and Japan represents an equally significant geopolitical development. Recognizing China's growing economic and military power, Trump has sought to create a counterweight that doesn't rely solely on U.S. military presence, but rather empowers regional powers to check Chinese expansionism. The strategic logic behind this partnership is straightforward. India brings demographic weight, economic potential, and geographic position that makes it a natural counterbalance to China. Japan offers technological sophistication, naval capabilities, and financial resources to support regional security architecture. Together, they form the core of what Trump hopes will become an Indo-Pacific NATO that can maintain regional stability without constant U.S. intervention. This initiative builds on earlier frameworks like the Quad, U.S., Japan, India, Australia, but goes further by encouraging direct bilateral security and economic cooperation between India and Japan. Trump's approach has been to reduce historical frictions between these nations while highlighting their shared concerns about Chinese maritime expansion, debt trap diplomacy, and technological espionage. What are some of the concrete steps that have been taken to enhance cooperation? First, defense cooperation has accelerated, with joint naval exercises in the Indian Ocean increasing in frequency and complexity. These exercises now focus specifically on anti-submarine warfare and freedom of navigation operations in disputed waters. Secondly, technology sharing agreements have been signed, particularly in areas of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and semiconductor manufacturing, all fields where both countries seek to reduce dependence on Chinese supply chains. Third, infrastructure projects have been coordinated to offer alternatives to China's Belt and Road Initiative, with Japanese financing supporting Indian-led port developments in South and Southeast Asia. Fourth, intelligence sharing mechanisms have been established, creating a regional network to monitor Chinese military movements and economic activities. Perhaps most significantly, India and Japan have begun discussions about a joint development program for next-generation fighter aircraft and naval vessels, representing a deepening of their defense industrial cooperation beyond simple procurement relationships. The economic aspect of the India-Japan partnership has been equally important. Both countries have worked to reduce trade barriers, with Japan offering preferential market access for Indian pharmaceutical and IT exports, while India has streamlined approval processes for Japanese manufacturing investments. In the energy sector, Japan has agreed to help finance India's transition away from coal power toward cleaner alternatives, including nuclear and renewable energy sources. This not only addresses climate concerns, but also reduces India's vulnerability to Chinese influence through energy infrastructure projects. Digital infrastructure has been another key area of cooperation, with Japanese companies partnering with Indian firms to develop 5G networks, data centers, and smart city projects across South Asia. This creates a technological ecosystem that can compete with Chinese offerings like Huawei's telecommunications equipment. Trump's visit to China in May 2026 represented a masterclass in transactional diplomacy, occurring against the backdrop of two major foreign policy initiatives, the Iran conflict and the Indo-Pacific realignment. The timing was particularly delicate, as the U.S. was simultaneously pressuring China to help resolve the Iran situation while building alliances specifically designed to counter Chinese influence. The visit demonstrated Trump's ability to compartmentalize relationships, pursuing economic agreements with China even as he worked to limit its strategic influence. This approach, while seemingly contradictory, reflects Trump's view that international relations need not be consistent across all domains, but rather should be tailored to maximize U.S. interests in each specific area. According to Trump's statements following the visit, China agreed to several significant purchases. 1. U.S. oil, a substantial commitment to buy American petroleum products, potentially reducing China's energy dependence on Iran and other Middle Eastern sources. 2. U.S. agricultural products, commitments to increase imports of American soybeans and beef, addressing trade imbalances while providing food security for China's growing population. 3. Boeing aircraft, an agreement to purchase 200 Boeing jets immediately, with a potential commitment to reach 750 aircraft total, a significant boost for America's aerospace industry. 4. Rare earth minerals, an extension of the truce in the trade war that allows continued flow of these critical minerals from China to the U.S., essential for high-tech manufacturing and defense applications. These agreements, while economically significant, also serve strategic purposes. By becoming a major customer for U.S. energy, China reduces its dependence on Iranian oil, potentially limiting its economic support for Tehran during the conflict. The Boeing orders not only create American jobs, but also deepen technological interdependence between the two nations. What is the impact of the Iran factor in U.S.-China relations? The ongoing conflict with Iran loomed over every aspect of Trump's visit to China. As the world's largest buyer of Iranian oil, purchasing approximately 90% of Iran's crude exports, China held significant leverage over Tehran's economy. Trump sought to convert this economic relationship into diplomatic pressure, asking Xi to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz and restrict weapons supplies to Iran. The results of this diplomatic effort were mixed. According to Trump, Xi assured him that China would not supply Iran with military equipment, particularly surface-to-air missiles that could enhance Iran's air defense capabilities. Xi also expressed opposition to the militarization of the Strait of Hormuz and efforts to charge tolls for its use, while indicating interest in buying oil from the United States as an alternative to Iranian supplies. However, China stopped short of committing to use its leverage to force Iran back to negotiations. As Trump explained aboard Air Force One, "I'm not asking for any favors because when you ask for favors, you have to do favors in return." He added that he thinks she would like to see the strait opened up, noting that China gets a significant portion of its oil from the Gulf, while claiming that the U.S. gets none. This delicate balancing act reflected China's own strategic calculations. While Beijing wanted to maintain stability in energy markets and protect its economic interests, It also sought to preserve its relationship with Iran and avoid being seen as bowing to U.S. pressure. The joint statement after the summit called for reopening shipping lanes as soon as possible and urged a comprehensive and lasting ceasefire in the Middle East, but offered no concrete mediation proposals. What part did the Taiwan question play in the discussions with China? Despite the progress on economic issues, the Taiwan question remained a point of significant divergence between the two nations. While Trump focused on trade in Iran during his public statements, Chinese officials made clear that they had warned the U.S. against overstepping on Taiwan during the meetings. This disagreement highlighted the limits of Trump's transactional approach. While economic interdependence could create incentives for cooperation on some issues, core strategic interests like Taiwan's status remain non-negotiable for Beijing. The summit produced no breakthrough on this front, with both sides essentially agreeing to disagree while maintaining dialogue. What was the Western alliance's response to the Iran conflict? One of the most striking aspects of the Iran conflict has been the reluctance of traditional U.S. allies, particularly European NATO members, to support military action against Iran. This reticence has multiple causes. 1. War fatigue. After decades of military interventions in the Middle East, European publics and leaders have little appetite for another conflict in the region. 2. Economic concerns. With Europe still recovering from energy disruptions caused by the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the prospect of further instability in global oil markets has been met with trepidation. 3. Diplomatic differences. Many European governments had supported the Iran nuclear agreement and viewed Trump's withdrawal from it as a mistake that led to the current crisis. 4. Strategic priorities. With the war in Ukraine continuing and tensions with Russia persisting, many European leaders view the Middle East as a secondary theater that distracts from more immediate security concerns. This lack of enthusiasm from NATO allies has had significant consequences. It has forced the U.S. to rely more heavily on regional partners in the Middle East rather than traditional Western allies. It has also accelerated the trend toward ad hoc coalitions based on specific interests rather than broad-based alliances built on shared values. What are the implications for the future of NATO in the Iran conflict? The NATO reluctance to support the Iran conflict raises fundamental questions about the future of the transatlantic alliance. While NATO remains committed to collective defense under Article 5, particularly regarding Europe, its willingness to engage in military operations outside Europe appears increasingly limited. This development has several implications. 1. Strategic autonomy. The U.S. may need to develop greater capability to conduct military operations without relying on European allies, potentially accelerating the shift of military resources toward the Indo-Pacific. 2. Regionalization of security. Security arrangements may become increasingly regional, with the U.S. maintaining different alliance structures for Europe, the Middle East, and the Indo-Pacific rather than seeking global coalitions. 3. Burden sharing. U.S. leaders may increasingly demand that regional partners take greater responsibility for security in their own neighborhoods, as seen with the Gulf states in the Iran conflict. 4. Institutional reform. The experience may lead to calls for reforming NATO to better address 21st century security challenges, including hybrid warfare, energy security, and great power competition with China. The combination of NATO's reluctance and Trump's proactive alliance building suggests a new architecture of global partnerships is emerging. 1. The Middle East Coalition, a security framework centered on the U.S., Israel, and Gulf states focused specifically on countering Iranian influence and ensuring energy security. 2. The Indo-Pacific Partnership, a network of relationships with Japan, India, Australia, and other regional powers designed to maintain freedom of navigation and counter Chinese expansionism. 3. The European Relationship, a more narrowly focused transatlantic partnership centered on European security and economic cooperation rather than global leadership. 4. The China Connection, a pragmatic relationship with China that combines competition in some areas with cooperation in others, particularly on economic issues and regional stability. This new architecture reflects Trump's preference for flexible, issue-based partnerships over rigid, ideological alliances. It also represents a shift away from the post-Cold War model of U.S.-led global institutions toward a more multipolar world where different regions have their own security arrangements. Despite the progress made in 2026, Trump's new alliance architecture faces several significant challenges. A. Domestic political constraints. In both the U.S. and partner countries, political opposition could limit the durability of these arrangements. In the U.S., congressional Democrats have criticized Trump's confrontational approach to Iran and China, while in Gulf states, there are concerns about being drawn into direct conflict with Iran. B. Economic pressures. The global economy remains fragile following the pandemic and energy disruptions. The costs of maintaining military readiness and supporting allies could become politically unsustainable if economic conditions worsen. C. Strategic miscalculations. The complex web of relationships could lead to unintended consequences if actions in one region trigger reactions in another. For example, escalation with Iran could affect China's calculations regarding Taiwan, or vice versa. D. Leadership transitions. Many of these arrangements depend heavily on personal relationships between Trump and other world leaders. Future leadership changes in any of the participating countries could disrupt these partnerships. E. Asymmetric interests. While all members of these alliances share certain concerns, their specific interests and red lines may not always align. Managing these differences will require careful diplomatic management. Despite these challenges, the new alliance architecture presents significant opportunities. A. Greater efficiency. By focusing on specific threats and interests rather than broad ideological commitments, these partnerships may prove more nimble and effective than traditional alliances. B. Regional ownership. Encouraging regional powers to take greater responsibility for their security could reduce the burden on U.S. resources while still advancing American interests. C. Economic integration. Linking security cooperation to economic partnerships, such as energy deals between the U.S. and China or technology sharing between India and Japan, creates multiple incentives for cooperation. D. Flexibility. The more fluid nature of these arrangements allows for adaptation to changing circumstances without the institutional constraints that sometimes limit traditional alliances. E. Deterrence value. The demonstration of resolve in the Middle East and Indo-Pacific may deter potential adversaries from testing you. S. Commitments in these regions. What are some of the near-term prospects, i.e. 2026 to 2027? In the immediate future, we can expect several developments. A. Consolidation of the Iran coalition. The ongoing conflict will likely lead to deeper military and intelligence cooperation among the U.S., Israel, and Gulf states, potentially formalizing into a more structured security arrangement. B. Expansion of India-Japan cooperation. The partnership between these two democratic powers will likely deepen through additional joint exercises, technology sharing agreements, and coordinated diplomatic initiatives. C. Continued U.S.-China economic engagement. Despite strategic competition, economic interdependence will likely continue to create opportunities for cooperation on specific issues like climate change, nuclear non-proliferation, and financial stability. D. NATO redefinition. The alliance will likely engage in a period of self-examination about its purpose and priorities, potentially leading to reforms that recognize the changing security environment. What are the medium-term possibilities, i.e. years 2027 to 2030? Looking further ahead, several scenarios are possible. Scenario 1. Successful containment. If Trump's approach proves successful, we might see Iran's regional influence significantly curtailed, China's expansion moderated through a combination of pressure and incentives, and a stable balance of power emerge in both the Middle East and Indo-Pacific. In this scenario, the new alliance architecture would be validated and potentially expanded to address other challenges like climate change and pandemics. This scenario would likely lead to a period of relative stability, with clear red lines established between competing powers and mechanisms for managing disagreements before they escalate into conflict. Scenario 2. Fragmentation and competition. If Trump's approach fails to achieve its objectives, we might see increasing fragmentation in the international system. Iran could emerge from the conflict with its revolutionary ideology strengthened, potentially leading to renewed proxy conflicts across the Middle East. China might interpret U.S. withdrawal from certain regions as an opportunity to expand its influence, particularly in Southeast Asia and Africa. In this scenario, the new alliance architecture could collapse into competing blocs, increasing the risk of miscalculation and confrontation. Scenario 3. Hybrid adaptation. The most likely scenario may be a hybrid of these extremes, where some elements of Trump's approach prove successful while others fail. The Middle East coalition might effectively contain Iranian influence but struggle to address broader regional challenges. The Indo-Pacific Partnership might successfully deter Chinese expansionism but fail to resolve underlying economic tensions. In this scenario, the international system would evolve toward a more complex set of relationships that blend elements of competition and cooperation across different domains. What are some of the long-term strategic implications, i.e. years 2030 and beyond? Looking toward the end of the decade, several long-term implications of Trump's alliance strategy become apparent. Institutionalization of regional security arrangements. The ad hoc coalitions formed during Trump's second term may evolve into more permanent institutional structures, potentially including formal security pacts with shared command structures and standardized equipment. Economic decoupling in strategic sectors. The emphasis on security-driven economic relationships may accelerate the bifurcation of global supply chains, particularly in technology, energy, and defense industries. Redefinition of American leadership. The U.S. may transition from being the primary security provider in multiple regions to a more selective role focused on balancing power and enabling regional partners to assume greater responsibility. Evolution of great power competition. The relationship between the U.S. and China may settle into a pattern of managed competition, with clear spheres of influence and mechanisms for crisis management rather than outright confrontation or cooperation. Transformation of international institutions. Existing global institutions like the UN Security Council and international financial institutions may lose relevance as alternative regional structures emerge to address security and economic challenges. In conclusion, how do we assess Trump's alliance strategy? President Donald Trump's effort to forge new alliances in the Middle East and Indo-Pacific represents one of the most significant attempts to reshape the international order since the end of the Cold War. By prioritizing shared threats over shared values and building partnerships based on specific strategic interests rather than broad ideological commitments, Trump has challenged decades of conventional wisdom about how American power should be projected and organized. The early results of this approach have been mixed. In the Middle East, the U.S. Israel-Gulf coalition has demonstrated remarkable cohesion in confronting Iran, effectively limiting Tehran's ability to project power beyond its borders. However, the costs of this confrontation, both human and economic, have been substantial, and the long-term stability of this arrangement remains uncertain as Iran continues to resist through asymmetric means. In the Indo-Pacific, the budding partnership between India and Japan shows promise as a counterweight to Chinese expansionism, though it remains in early stages of development. The economic dimensions of this relationship have progressed more rapidly than security cooperation, suggesting that economic interdependence may be the foundation upon which deeper security ties are built. Trump's engagement with China during his May 2026 visit demonstrated both the potential and limitations of his transactional approach to diplomacy. While securing significant economic agreements that benefit American workers and create interdependence, he made limited progress on core strategic issues like Iran's nuclear program and Taiwan security. This mixed outcome highlights the inherent tension between seeking economic cooperation while simultaneously building alliances to contain Chinese influence. Perhaps most significantly, the reluctance of traditional NATO allies to support U.S. actions in the Middle East has accelerated the trend toward regionalization of security arrangements. This development reflects a broader shift in the international system away from universal institutions toward more specialized partnerships tailored to specific challenges and regions. As we look to the future, Trump's alliance strategy will likely be judged not by its ideological coherence, but by its effectiveness in advancing American interests and maintaining international stability. If successful, it could mark the beginning of a new era in international relations, one defined by flexible, interest-based partnerships rather than rigid, ideological blocs. If unsuccessful, it could lead to a more fragmented and dangerous international environment, with miscalculation and conflict becoming more likely. Regardless of the ultimate outcome, Trump's attempt to forge these new alliances has already changed the conversation about how America should engage with the world. By challenging long-held assumptions about the nature of international partnerships, he has opened space for new thinking about how the United States can protect its interests and promote its values in a rapidly changing global environment. This legacy, regardless of one's assessment of his specific policies, may prove to be his most significant contribution to the ongoing evolution of American foreign policy. The world that emerges from these transformations will be neither the unipolar moment of the 1990s nor the multipolar competition of the early 21st century, but something different altogether, a networked system of overlapping alliances and partnerships where power is both more concentrated and more diffuse than ever before. Navigating this new environment will require diplomatic skill, strategic patience, and a willingness to adapt to changing circumstances, qualities that will determine whether Trump's bold gamble with global alliances ultimately strengthens or weakens America's position in the world. To watch more videos like this one, you can go to our website at nehemiahreset.org, to our rumble.com or youtube.com channels. We publish new videos weekly. You can also sign up to receive our weekly new video list by going to nehemiahreset.org/email and sign up for our weekly newsletter. To help our channel, please like and subscribe so that more people can see these important videos. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Are you looking for a limitless supply of insightful reads to expand your mind and transform your life? Look no further than Nehemiah Reset's ebook library, where knowledge meets inspiration at nehemiahreset.org ebook. Go there today to discover a wealth of valuable resources to help you on your personal and professional journey to build a biblical worldview. Learn more about the Bible and how culture is impacting your worldview. Again, the ebook library is located at nehemiahreset.org ebook. Hope to see you soon. My name is Daniel. I am one of the spokespersons for Nehemiah Reset. The prior video was sponsored by Nehemiah Reset, a 501c3. Our mission is to assist Christians in developing a biblical worldview as it pertains to relevant cultural and biblical issues. We seek to inform Christ's followers, equip them, and mobilize them in action to vote for their biblical values and actively engage in our We are also committed to help Christians and non-believers to develop a better biblical view. Nehemiah Reset produces videos and ebooks to assist members of the church in developing a biblical worldview when it comes to cultural issues. We produce videos on key topics like public school indoctrination, the woke agenda, sex education, equity and inclusion, climate change, immigration, religious freedom, and much, much more. To learn more about Nehemiah Reset or to watch our latest videos, go to our website at nehemiahreset.org or our rumble.com channel. We produce 2 to 3 videos every week. To get a weekly list of our latest videos, sign up for our weekly newsletter by going to nehemiahreset.org/email and subscribe. You can support our website by liking our videos, subscribing to our channels, or helping us reach more people through tax-exempt donations. Thanks for your help in growing God's kingdom and bringing more people to Christ. Thank you for your support and help. Come back again soon. Have a great day.